Good afternoon. My name is Roger Casali from World Upshift Forum. Welcome to our fireside chat with Gabriel McDowell about communities of light. Thank you for your presence. Those of you who are joining us here in the Temple of Light at the Ananda Center, Assisi, the Ananda European Center. And thank you to all of you around the world who are joining us today online. And the World Upshift Forum is a place of gifts, and it's a wonderful gift to be here in person for this fireside chat. And we're going to receive the gift of Kabir's conversation with us about communities of light. But just want to share with you what a marvelous time I've had here at the Ananda Center, visiting their farm, enjoying the beautiful food that they've grown and prepared here. And we had a beautiful evening last night here in the Ananda Center talking about the World Upshift Forum. And the Ananda movement is the World Upshift movement, raising of consciousness, simplicity of living, higher thinking, working together from the heart to catalyze an upshift in humanity. And talking of gifts, I've just been presented by Nandini with a gift, a beautiful gift. And let's see what it is. It's a book by Yogananda, about the essentials of the Bhagavad Gita. And we know that we have people watching us today in California, in Boston, in Delhi, in all parts of the world. And that the Yogananda movement has touched the lives of millions of people around the world and continues to do so. So I thank you for the gift of this book. I thank you for the gift, once again, the gift of your presence here in person or online. Now, without further ado, we jump into the conversation with Kabir, because Kabir has also had lived his life in many different parts of the world, the United States, different parts of the United States, also in India and in other places that we're going to hear about. And he's dedicated his life to education. And we're going to be talking about how education can transform the lives of individuals and communities, how the importance of education in personal growth and in transforming people's lives. So Kabir has had a long career as Director of Education for Life, and at the moment he's working on a new project called Communities of Light, which we're going to hear about. So Kabir, welcome. It's ironic that I welcome you because here you are at home at the Ananda Center in the Temple of Light, the place that you've made your home and your dear wife Bahina for many years. And it has been a very long and very productive career, and a new phase of your career is about to flower, which we're looking forward to hearing about, which is wonderful. But let me start by taking you back, if I may, to where it all began, really, and to ask you, I'm curious to know, and I think our listeners may be curious to know, something about your own journey in education, and how it started for you. So what are your earliest recollections of your own education? Where did you go to school? And how did you experience school life? Because I wonder whether we find any clues there about what subsequently became of you and the contribution that you've been making, continue to make over so many years. How was school for you, Kabir?
Well, school for me was an interesting experience. And I wouldn't say the best experiences that I had, but I started off, I was born in North Carolina, lived up and down on the East Coast of US. But when I was young, we had a kind of a tragedy in our home. We lost a member of the family, and it affected me very deeply. And whereas before I had been a very good, solid student, all of a sudden I was failing everything. I had no interest in education and learning. And there was a lot of concern. But I with the grace and the help of my family, I stayed back one year and I repeated a grade when I was in 5th grade. And it was a turning point for me because at that point I was able to overcome a lot of the obstacles that I had in my heart. And I was encouraged. I began to flower again as a student. It was a very interesting point, though, to answer your question, because I started to realize that that it's not just a good mind that makes a good student. It's bringing in the heart and the whole self into that experience that can create the best of students if one's whole being is engaged with that aspect of it.
I was curious to find out more about that. I'm sorry to hear about the trauma and the family bereavement, but it's interesting that it was through your personal experience, really, that made you start to think about what education really is about. It's not just from the mind, it's from the heart. And I think you didn't just have that one experience in recovering from that traumatic event in your life. It also, your mind continued to wander in that direction, didn't it? And in fact, when you left school, you went on and you decided to study education, and in particular child psychology. How did that happen? How did that start?
Well, I started with education, thinking that there are a lot of children out there in the world that are troubled. This is before I became associated with the spiritual journey. But I recognize there are a lot of kids that could be going through what I went through, and perhaps I could help a little bit. So I went to the University of North Carolina and started off in the education department, thought of pursuing master's and a doctorate. And in the first week, I recognized what was happening at that university for me in these classes. It was superbly boring. There was nothing that helped me to understand how to really teach, how to connect with other beings, other children who also needed to engage with their whole self. It was all about open your book to page 33 and so forth. So I became quite disenchanted with education for a while, and I shifted to a different pursuit, which is a Bachelor of Science in child psychology, humanistic child psychology. Humanistic because I wanted to help the children to nurture their deeper self, their whole self, which I didn't understand at that point, but I knew there was more. So I went into child psychology at New York University.
Well, boredom is a wonderful thing if it fires the imagination.
Yes.
And it sounds as if that's what happened in your case. And so there you are now in New York studying child psychology. But as I understand it, you didn't stay in New York for too long. Something else occurred.
Well, that's sort of the story of my life, that I started out in New York. In fact, I loved what I was doing. I was working at the university. I was a counselor in schools. I was developing my profession, starting to move toward a master's degree. And I woke up one morning with a very clear thought. I had no idea where it came from. Go to California. And a very strange thought, because I was happy and successful. And yet within 2 weeks, I was on the road in my little Volkswagen, driving all the way across the country to California. And friends were saying, why? And I said, I don't know. Where in California? I don't know. And so in fact, I drove all the way across to Santa Rosa, right over close to the coast. And I got to this town, and I sat at the library and I asked myself, why am I here? and it wasn't too long before I discovered what it was.
You made it all the way across from coast to coast in your little VW. That must have been quite an experience, quite exciting. Maybe you weren't sure when you set off whether you actually make it, but you did. And just before you set off, just return that for a second. What did your professors and the university staff say about this epiphany that you had?
Well, politely, but they thought I was crazy. And I wondered about that myself. However, I did know that somehow it was the right thing to do. I had never had that experience where something was strongly guiding me, but I knew it was the right thing. And they saw that commitment, that focus that I had, and somehow they allowed in fact, some of them actually gave me extra money saying, okay, we want to make sure you get all the way across the country. So I got donations out of it too. But I did make it all the way across the country safely, and with their blessings as well.
Yeah, well, if they did think that at the time, I'm sure they don't think that now. And there you were, you arrived in California, and you told me you went into a bookshop
Mhm.
and your eye settled on a particular book that
Yes.
subsequently changed your life.
The Autobiography of a Yogi. After a certain amount of time there in Santa Rosa, still wondering what I was there for, I I have been attending some classes just to continue my education, and at a university. And I walked into a bookstore thinking I need something to read, and there it was, the Autobiography of a Yogi, which I had seen before, and yet this time I found myself picking it up and grasping and holding it tight to my chest, and I was still wondering, why am I doing that? But I read it in 3 days, nonstop. I just couldn't put it down because it was talking to me from within, and felt so familiar. I knew what was these teachings were about. It was awakening me.
Yes, so there you were. You all found yourself in California. You found this doorway into the Ananda movement, which I imagine many have found before
Yes,
and
that's
since.
right.
And you joined the Ananda community, and you met Swami
Ananda?
Kriyananda, and you were in the village community for some time, and serving in the Ananda
That's right.
community and learning and combining that with your interest in education. And then Swami Kriyananda came to Italy, and and then you had another journey to make, this time not in your Volkswagen, and
Yes.
it wasn't a voice in your head. It was it was a phone call from Swami
That's right.
Kriyananda, and he asked you to come with him. Yeah,
That's right.
and you
To
said
help out
yes.
here in the community was already established, but they asked me to come be here too.
So that's what you did. So you came
Exactly.
from the United States to Italy, following Swami Kriyananda.
That's right.
And how did you spend your time? I mean, what did you know what he wanted you to do before you left, or did
Well,
you
he had said that he would like me to start help him to start something, the One Faith Federation, sort of a different kind of community of different faiths. And when I got here, it turned out that I had other ways of serving as well. And so being part of a community sometimes just means you step into the door and say, what is needed? What can I do to help?
yeah.
And I found many beautiful things. This temple was just being built.
There were many answers to that question. What could I
Many,
do to
many.
help?
That's
Well,
right.
one of the answers to the question was, would you write a book? He
Now,
asked you to
shortly
write a
after
book.
that, yes, after I was here for a bit of time, and then in 2002, Swami called me to his house and said, would I write a book? And I
Yeah.
said, even before knowing what the book was, I said, yes.
Yes. So you made that commitment at
I
the time,
did, yes.
but you didn't write the book at the time.
No.
But you are writing the book now.
Correct. This is the time. I think Swami often was many years ahead of his time, and he could see forward. And I'm certain that he knew I was not quite ready to write the book, which was about communities. He
Yeah.
asked, but I wasn't ready. But he knew I would be eventually. 22 years later.
So 22 years later, you do know the title of the book.
Yes, exactly.
What is it?
Communities of Light. Here.
Oh, beautiful. And what's it about?
Well, the Communities of Light is something, again, taking guidance from Swami Kriyananda. He shared that he wanted me to write this book about communities, not a book that's just about Ananda community, which is highly successful. And I've been a participant of for 45 years now, since 1977. But he was saying that that his mission, Paramahansa Yogananda's mission, was to help the world uplift in consciousness through, in part, communities, spiritual communities, holistic communities, communities where the one of the main principles would be simple living plus high thinking leads to the greatest happiness, where people could come together and cooperate, live in harmony, and supportive of each other, and share a certain vision. And so this is the book that he asked me to write. But he also suggested that it's not about just giving the idea, the concept. There are a lot of books being written about communities in general, but not many know and understand what goes into actually building a community. There are many different aspects to build a community that survives. Many communities do not. And yet there is a way to structure and support with a higher vision, a community that will be able to sustain the challenges and the different times that we go through. And this is what I am writing about now.
Yeah, so we come to a little bit more detail about this. I'm very curious to know the answer to the questions you're asking yourself. And but can you paint a picture of us for perhaps for what a community of light? I have a feeling that the Ananda community is very close to what you're talking about in terms of communities of light. But you told me it's not just about Ananda; it's about the world as a whole, and that there are communities of light outside. And in fact, you could think of a family, you could think of many different situations. Can you paint us a picture of?
That's beautiful.
We'll talk about some of the challenges and so on in a second. But first of all, what is your vision? What you love this idea of communities of light.
Absolutely,
You
yes.
love it. Tell us about your love for the idea of a community of light. And then we'll come to the reality of things in a second.
Well, that's a very fine, beautiful question, because community, many people will associate community with a group of people living together, and that could certainly be part of it, sharing resources, sharing ideas and vision. And yet it's broader than that. And as you mentioned, families, a community are two or more gathered together to be able to connect in a meaningful way, in a way, purposeful way, that they're sharing ideals and direction and sharing on all different levels of the heart and of the soul and of the mind. That a family in the world today, not many families would be defined as communities, but I would suggest that the family is where you start building communities, where people learn how to connect with each other, how to communicate, how to share on all these different levels, how to have a direction that they're working together to attain. Then you can expand on that, and a neighborhood can become a community. A school could and should become a community. Businesses, corporations, and the list goes on. There are many ways that communities can be developed. In fact, I was speaking with someone yesterday who said that he would like me to come to his business up in northern Italy and help his 60 workers become a community, because they'll be happier. They'll be able to work in harmony. Probably the business will do much better, in fact.
So absolutely beautiful vision. We're hearing about presence, about connection, about collaboration, and your book is not just telling the story of communities. It's very much a practical handbook, isn't it?
Yes,
I'm
absolutely.
fascinated by the logo and the lotus flower and the 7 leaves and the 7 dots, and one of them at the top is different to the others. And of course, in this fireside chat, we haven't got time to go through every single strand of this. I hope you will, when the book is published, you will buy the book, Communities of Light, B.M. McDowell, when it's published later this year. But perhaps pick 2 or 3 of these, and unfold this lotus flower for us. Pick 2 or 3 of these strands, and let's drill down a little bit into some of the practical side.
Okay, very good. The lotus is, of course, an image of any flower that's blossoming. Is something that is growing, it's alive, it's vitally important and beautiful. And so the image begins with the lotus with 7 petals. Each petal is slightly different and representing people that are coming and together as one to be able to each individually contribute to the whole, but also grow individually as well. And then what we see is the 7 dots it's a unique approach to understanding community, where what I've been working on and explaining is a community is like the chakras that we have inside of ourselves, these 7 energy centers, and actually more, but the 7 basic energy centers that we carry within us, they are also represented in the development of a community. At the top, here we have this orange one, and that can represent what we would say is the highest chakra, the crown chakra. Where is it that we're going? And I spoke with some people about communities, and I asked the question, When you want to build a community, where do you start? Well, let's build the buildings. Let's buy the land. Let's, get the gardens going. Well, that all makes good sense. But if if there's not a way to communicate and to share and a vision that they're in agreement with, that's a higher vision, and eventually that it can break down and the conflicts can develop out of that, and unresolvable conflicts. And this is the reason that many communities don't succeed on all levels, again, families and neighborhoods and businesses. So for example, let me give examples of three different aspects. So we can start even with the first, what I'll call the community chakra. Again, it's an energy center. And the first chakra is all about the idea of creating that stable foundation. It's about our need, all of us have the need to experience connectiveness, to be able to feel like we belong with something that's higher than our own selves, and that we're part of that in a significant way. Well, the first chakra is, we also have a principle that goes with each and every chakra. And the principle is the core, it's the depth of something that we're trying to understand and live together. And the principle of the first chakra is, again, I mentioned it before, simple living plus high thinking leads to the greatest happiness. And then there's the fourth chakra, I'll just mention that briefly, which is the people are more important than things. And so we start to understand that principle, and that helps us to make the wise choices, that it's about people. We're all here because we're individuals that are seeking to grow. We're seeking to find a higher state of happiness, and we can do this together. We can support each other in this way. And then we move through all these different chakras and the way of balancing each one, understanding the balancing. And again, it's very practical. We come to the seventh chakra, which is all about realization. We're all here to realize our full potential, to acknowledge, not only acknowledge it, but become that, our own higher selves. And the principle for that one, I can very briefly, this is something one can go into for days of these workshops. To attain self-realization, all one needs to do is to improve one's knowing. All one needs to do to improve one's knowing. It's all there. We are these higher selves. We are connected together already. We all are, in another sense, a deep connection as oneness. And we are trying to work so hard, but all we have to do is improve our knowing. And there are ways to do that. Simple ways like meditation, like serving together, like having fun and joy in nature together. There are many different techniques that can help us.
So Communities of Light is a practical handbook. It's representing the seven chapter chakras, and each of these petals of the lotus flower represents these, and the seven spheres, with the highest being self-realization. And the principles and the practical advice, if you want to realize an intentional community, large or small, drawn from 45 years of your experience. Mm-hmm. And I'm hearing very much that these principles are applicable to any kind of organization, actually, absolutely, whether it's a business or a family, mm-hmm, or a school. And that really, people more important than things. So it's really about the quality of relationships and communication. Yes. And if we look below and congratulations, by the way, because I think it's the first time that we're seeing your logo. Yes,
today's the first
day. Here it is. It's a very beautiful logo. Thank you for unpacking it for us and explaining about the book. And underneath, I think it's also got three things as well. Can you just read those out to us?
Yes, three aspects. The first is inspiring consciousness. This is what we're trying to do as a community of light. Help each other to awaken, upshift. Yes, our consciousness. The second one is building connections, meaningful connections, deep connections that are supportive and wholesome and nurturing that higher self again. And the third one is sharing joy. That we're here to be able to gain and work together, but ultimately we're here to help to bring joy and love on the whole planet. and to work together to reach out like we are doing with the Upshift movement.
Bring to life for us for a moment of joy that you have experienced in a community of light.
Okay. Sometimes the greatest joy comes through one, it could be just by meditating together, but sometimes the greater joy comes through going through a challenge together and succeeding, hopefully. And short story, make a long story short. We went camping many years ago, and as a community, about 30 of us, and we chose to go up on top of a mountain, an hour and a half from here, and we brought our tents and our sleeping bags, and we landed. We drove, we parked, and the storm began. The winds, the rain. It was intense. We learned later that it was the biggest storm of the whole year so far at that time. It was in the springtime, I believe, or toward the summer. And we had the choice, do we go back down or do we stay? No one left. We worked together. We put up the tarps. We helped each other to get the tent stable. We covered an area even for the campfire in the kitchen. We made dinner while it was storming all around us, but we were dry around the fire. We even made pizza. And being in Italy, it was absolutely wonderful. We all felt this joy. Here it was, there could be storms in life, there could be difficulties, and yet here we are together, encouraging each other, helping each other, supporting. That was a true community experience, and we just felt the joy.
We feel the joy. I feel an abundance of joy. May your cup overflow. And I think you mentioned Upshift. I think the connection with this is this joy that you felt personally, the joy that you felt in the community, under the rain, on the mountaintop, facing these challenges. This abundance of joy is shared, I think, with the wider community as well. So this touches not just your lives, but it's also something that flows into the wider community. Even those of us who perhaps if I have a choice between going up on the mountain and staying in the valley, I'd probably stay in the valley. But I can feel the abundance of joy, and so that there is something that is enriching all of us and touching all of us. And I think that is an element of the Upshift. So we've got a minute or two to go of this part of the conversation. We're going to open up to questions from the floor and to our dear audience online. But of course, we are having this conversation in the context of talking about the Upshift movement to catalyze an upshift in humanity. I didn't need to say to you how much Upshift is in what you're doing, but perhaps you could explain to us in terms of how you see the Upshift movement as something that connects with communities of light, and how can we be helping you?
A marvelous question. You had mentioned before, we are Upshift.
Yeah.
And that's a wonderful way of saying it, that any of us that are really trying to awaken higher consciousness, improve our knowing, and to help others to do that as well. It's shifting our consciousness into a higher level, a higher frequency, a higher dimension, as it were, that we are working together to lift up our consciousness, to upshift. Upshift, as what you have put together, Roger, is and with Aaron Laszlo, is phenomenally wonderful. I'm just still discovering what it's all about, but what I've seen now is that we are connected with Upshift movement. The World Upshift .org is the address for that. And what it offers is this opportunity, a way of connecting with many other organizations that are striving in some way, in many different ways, to bring upliftment in this world. This is a particularly challenging time right now. And many are confused, there's some amount of chaos. And when you get together with others that are thinking with a higher state of moving toward a higher state of consciousness together, and we can combine, we can hold hands, we can share ideas. This is what the Upshift movement has given us now. It's a great gift for us.
Well, thank you for your gift to the Upshift movement. Thank you for the book you're going to write about communities communities of light. I mentioned that the Upshift movement is a place of gifts, also a place to come to ask questions. We don't have answers. We do hold a space where we become questions, but I think you have some answers to some of the questions that some of the organizations and wonderful people who come into the Upshift movement will have. And so we can signpost your book, your work, your life's mission. And I believe you're also going, in terms of the next steps, you're going to be perhaps offering courses,
workshops
and so on. And we look forward to working with you on that and perhaps developing the opportunities for those who engage with the World Upshift Forum to be able to participate in these courses or to come to you directly or to come here to Ananda. So, Kabir, good luck with the publication of the book. Roger. Congratulations on the beautiful logo. Thank you for this sharing your experience, your vision, and giving us a sense of anticipation about your forthcoming book, Communities of Light, a practical handbook for those looking to set up intentional communities. So perhaps we can pause here for a moment, and then we will go into a phase where we have questions from the floor and from Zoom. But first of all, let's show our appreciation to Kabir for the wonderful work that he's doing. Okay. So now it's time for the tough questions. Yeah.
Well, lots of people.
So perhaps you've had an opportunity to reflect. Perhaps you have a specific question that you would like to ask Kabir. We are in Italy. We're in Assisi in Umbria, and so if you'd like to ask your question in Italian, that's absolutely fine. I will translate it. Fortunately, I learned to speak Italian. I recommend this to everybody. It's been a beautiful experience, and I hope that I can do a good job of translating. But if you want to ask your question in English, I may need to translate that as well, because sometimes we get very long questions in English that need to be somehow interpreted. Perhaps we put it that way. So if you ask your question in Italian, I will try to interpret and translate it faithfully. If you ask your question in English and it's too long, I will try to interpret it faithfully. And if I have not done so, then you have the opportunity to say, no, that isn't what I asked. I asked a different question. And then we will try again. So don't be shy. The reason that I am now speaking so much is just to give you the chance to see if somebody would like to ask a question. Thank you very much indeed. Please say your name. And I wonder if you would like to, might come, perhaps you prefer not to, but we would love to see you. Our audience would love to see you. No, you're going to stay put. Okay, but tell us your name. And Vainadi, what is your question, please? And I'm a little difficulty hearing, so in Italian, if you wish, in Italian. But please speak loudly as you can.
In questo momento c'è un luogo di incontro virtuale o anche avete o prevedete un luogo dove ci si può incontrare in presenza, una sede di questo movimento dove le persone vengono e si incontrano come adesso qui noi.
Yeah, so I think that's perhaps a question for both of us.
Okay.
And the question was, in the Upshift movement, is it a place where people can meet personally or in presence, in a live or a virtual space? So certainly there's a virtual space. There are two virtual spaces. One is called Connection Field and one is on a platform called Mighty Networks. We call it the World Upshift Odyssey. If you go onto the worldupshift.org website, you'll see a button that says Start Here. You can sign up as a member. It's free. You go to the members area, you get credentials, and then you can see how to access the two virtual spaces. One is called Connection Field, and the other is called the World Upshift Odyssey. And then you can go into those spaces. And there will be many, many meetings in person, because We are called the World Upshift Forum, not the World Upshift Movement. The World Upshift Movement is not a thing. It's out there in the world. You are the World Upshift Movement, wherever upshift work is going on. And so I think wherever our partner organizations, our friends are organizing meetings, we can signpost Upshift. We can say, we think that's what it's difficult to define it, but we know what it is when we see it. And we've just heard a wonderful presentation of what really is Upshift. And so everything you do here in the Ananda community, for me, is a kind of upshift. And so we want to, I know how open you are as an Ananda community to others in the community. You don't have to be a member of Ananda to come participate. And so, think of that as an upshift movement. Think of the work that you do here as that. If you want to, it's not about putting a label on it. It's about trying to do things that catalyze an upshift in humanity, that raise our consciousness. So I think everything you do here is a kind of in-person upshift meeting, if you want to think about it that way. But the label doesn't matter. Who's doing it doesn't matter. What matters is the vibration. This idea of from the heart, doing it with love, raising the consciousness. This is what matters. And this is a mission. And so I think you're doing it right here and now. That is your in-person meeting. So I hope that's a response to your question. But this is really, I think, very much resonating with what you're doing in communities of light, isn't it? So, I mean, how does that work in communities of light? Is it virtual and online? How do and in person? How do people meet in a community of light?
Well, certainly, this being a prime example of a community of light, people come and are touched and they get changed. They feel inspired. They feel like they're building connections. They feel the joy. They go home to their families, to their friends, and people notice something's different about you. And there's a sweetness, there's a joy that bubbles up and it expresses itself in their work and their families. And people say, what are you doing? What's different? How does this happen? And so word of mouth is actually the primary way that they experience it from somebody else and say, I want that too. Now, so people come here and experience it. And in addition, we do have a lot of online courses. Communities, a community of light can certainly be a physical location, and yet communities can be developed by just sharing in other ways as well. It could, as we shared, it's families, it's neighborhoods, it's but there are online opportunities as well for sharing these principles and applying them in your life wherever that might be.
That's great to be hearing about how this can work online, because it connects with your question, and It also connects with the question that Jyot Prasad is asking us online, and Jyot is from Conscious Food Systems Alliance, which is a wonderful initiative also linked to the UN that we have a connection with through World Upshift Forum as well. And Jyota says that is talking about, of course, we're in a kind of new world post-COVID, aren't we?
Yes.
COVID, was really a moment where online communities really suddenly emerged very, very strongly. They were there before, but that the COVID experience obviously took it to another level. And they're still there, aren't they? We got used to these online communities, and so Jyot is asking exactly that. That the Conscious Food Systems Alliance is an online community, and Jyot says, I would love to share the principles in that space. So here already you see
beautiful
this going across this the joy from the mountain spreading around the world. It says, can you say more about this? It seems the principles of communities, and you were talking about how that works in person with the word of mouth and so on, but you're saying the principles of communities of light can apply to online communities as well, something you just said. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Well, I really appreciate that comment, and especially the idea that can we share, can we talk, can we participate together in this? It's absolutely beautiful and absolutely essential. Part of my work in developing this book is to speak with many people around the world who are either doing this or striving in some way or overcoming obstacles. It's not easy to build a community. There are obstacles, there are challenges, especially in this world that we live in today. There's a lot of confusion, and we need to work together and to share ideas and to encourage each other. So I would love it if people were to write and say, "Can we talk? Can we communicate?" We have Zoom. I have an email address at Kabir at what is it? Communitiesoflightnetwork.com. Kabir at communitiesoflightnetwork.com. I'd love to talk, and so that we can do.
Yeah. Thank you. So here's a question from Rachel that follows on very well from that. It's a question to both of us, but I'm going to ask you to go first,
Okay.
and then I will add anything to what you say. And it's an observation as well as a question. It's an observation that communities have been there since the beginning of time. Yeah.
Certainly.
And so really, we're good at building communities, because we're still here as humanity, and we've been building communities since the dawn of time. So nobody can tell us we can't build communities, because it's evident that we have. And perhaps community building is a kind of innate natural capacity, says Rachel. So why is it that we need to teach about communities? It's a nice rhetorical question. And how to create communities. Why? Surely it's something that we just know, isn't it? And in particular, follow-up question, and I think this is really the one with where this is going, is why is there the need for this now? Why is there the need for this right now?
Well, those two are very closely associated. Why is it needed now? This will start with that. This is an evolving world. And whereas we all see the struggles that are out there around economy and politics and wars, and climate and diseases, we all recognize that things are shifting, and it's a little destabilizing. People become a little less strong, a little less secure, because what is really striving to happen through this process is, in fact, an evolution of consciousness, an upshift of consciousness, an evolution of our understanding and our ability to connect at increasingly higher levels, to allow our consciousness to expand, to include greater realities. It's confusing because this is new for most people. Some of the old approaches to life don't apply as easily or at all now. So yes, community is built into all of us, but there's something new that's trying to happen. A community of light starts at the top with that vision, with that understanding that there's a new opportunity for growing, but we need to do this together as well, because the challenges are very apparent once you start working on this idea. Now, why do we need to have instruction? If I may say, simply because we all have different opinions, very much so. We all have our own personal thoughts and our own personal egos. And I've done a little research on 10 reasons communities fail. Since the 1960s, there have been over 20,000 communities started. 90% of them are no longer existing now. Why not? And one very apparent reason is that they didn't share a higher vision and a life according to principles, higher principles. It was more, okay, we let's have a community. We can just be together. We can grow. That's beautiful. We can have a self-sustaining community. But after a certain period of time, even for these beautiful visions, there comes this conflict. And if people are not aware of how to work through these moments of challenge, how to communicate, how to realize people are more important than things, how to realize that the knowledge is there. We just have to improve our knowing, how to build a simple living, high thinking environment. This is what takes time and communication and sharing with each other. And we're still learning. This is also why I want to communicate with other communities and other organizations that are doing this. We are learning together, and we're working together with Upshift and many other organizations now.
And of course, your book is not a blueprint; it's a handbook, isn't
handbook,
it? So
exactly.
it's not kind of
Exactly.
saying if you do this, then you will have a successful community. But if that's your intention, and you apply the principles and some of the guidance from Kabir's book, Communities of Light, perhaps there will be a much higher chance that you can actually succeed than there would be if you wouldn't. So it's something that can be helpful to you, but it's not a guarantee.
May I say it's directional? We're always trying to go in the right direction. And sometimes it's a little bit meandering a bit, but we know we're going here, not just
Going
around
to
in
the
circles.
top of the mountain, even if we're
That's
under
right.
the rain.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that's coming out of it for me is that the principles, by reading and reflecting on the principles, even if you don't apply every single one directly tomorrow morning, it's something that can inform you, yes, if you're trying to build an intentional community, but actually, even if you're not trying to build an intentional community, it can inform you in every aspect of your life, because it seems to me the message is coming through very, very strongly. And I think that does come across into what the energy around the Upshift movement. It's this idea that actually in any organization, whether it's a business or a family, if people don't show up with their presence, if the quality of the relationships isn't good, if there isn't communication, then however much you have in the way of skills and knowledge and resources, that organization is going to be challenged. And so really we need to give much more attention to that human relational side of things. And I think to me that speaks to Rachel's other question about why it is now. If we think about it for a moment, where we are today in the world with all the challenges that we face, we are in a kind of remote and challenging place. It could be the top of the mountain, it could be somewhere else in the rain, and it can seem very overwhelming. And you might think, well, how can I respond in that situation, even to the point of being traumatic as we experience the world as it is today? And here is an idea, that actually look into yourself. Go back to the story that you had when you were in school and you had that setback, that trauma, and you had a year out of school and you came back into school and you found, not in your head, but in your heart, a place from which you could grow again. The spring is coming and things are messy and difficult and challenging and overwhelming, but the spring comes and the new seeds turn into flowers and the garden grows. And we have this capacity within us as human beings for new growth to come, and through communication to find that moment of joy and to find the power and the ability to be able to go forward. So I think whether you follow whether you decide to have a community of light or whatever you're doing in your life, you're going to find something in Kabir's book that speaks to what we need to do now. And I think the point about now is that things seem so challenging and overwhelming, but actually maybe the solutions lie deep within ourselves and in the connection, the deep connection between all of us, which we've forgotten about, that we need to discover again. And you're giving us, through the presentation in your book, some practical ideas about how we can actually do this, because it's a beautiful vision. But I think again and again, people want to know how.
Absolutely.
How do we actually do this? How can we do this? This is what we want, but how do you actually do it? Well, you're going to find answers to the how question in Kabir's book. Now, we have another question, I think. And this time is from Valentina. And it's a very simple question, which we all want to know, which is, when is the book going to be published?
Well, I'd like to know that too. A book is a process. My goal is to have it by the end of this year, and to be able to settle into seclusion times and just really very deeply focus. I must say, when I'm writing, it's such an amazing experience because what I'm realizing, for example, the idea of the chakras for communities, I sort of heard that idea inside. It's almost like taking dictation for me. The ideas are coming and the concepts, and I'm sitting there saying, wow, that's a really good idea. Where'd that come from? I know where it comes from. This is what is happening now. There's a higher consciousness that's working together with us to bring this into a state of reality on a physical plane. And so by tuning into it, that book is already there. That book already exists. Yes, I have to listen carefully. I have to be able to put it together grammatically and structure it right, and also talk to other people because some pieces of that book exist in other people's consciousness. And so drawing on that as well. My hope is by the end of this year, and in fact, I think it's more than hope. It needs to be because now's the time. There's a shift that's occurring that's very powerful right now, and there's a great grace that's occurring that is much stronger than the challenges. And when people start to see that there is a light that is shining inside of them, there's a light that's shining in their communities that we can develop that and grow together, that light becomes so bright that many times the challenges sort of disappear because we're lifting that consciousness into a place of great light and great joy, great love. And there, it's so beautiful to be in that state. And that's where the book already exists. My job is to get that consciousness right inside of me and be able just to listen well and keep my handwriting typing quickly.
I think you're writing there's a reason perhaps why you waited 20 years to write the book now, and it seems to me to be the right thing at the right time and in the right place. We're coming towards the close of today's Fireside chat. Time is racing away. I wonder whether there are one or two closing comments that you want to just highlight, Kabir, before I wrap it up and say thank you.
Well, the word that comes to me is just love. That we're in a state that is challenging so many people, and they fall into a state of fear, a state of anxiety, a state of feeling loss or the fear of having loss happen in their lives. That's normal, and yet it's not unnecessary, because there are such great gifts that are being given to all of us now that we can, by just becoming still, taking time to be together in harmonious ways. But also another part of that, a core part of any, as I sense it, the communities of light that are truly building in strength and endurance and longevity, the core is inside each one individually and then collectively, that we keep tuning inside to a source of strength. And that source of strength happens to be love. That it blossoms as this image, it blossoms and flowers and grows, but for each one of us to become a petal and recognize we are individual and yet we're also together. And the core of our being is this love that mankind is destined to be able to experience more deeply and to really share. We have a period of a few years where the challenges are very great. We need to focus on that inner strength and being able to share that love and the joy with each other. And we will endure. Not only that, but we will thrive. We'll blossom as men. And in fact, community of mankind is what we're really working on building, step by step. One family, one person at a time, one family, one neighborhood, one community one state, one country, one world, and it will come to that.
Well, it's an absolutely wonderful, wonderful message. And the good news is that we are not only going to survive the trauma as you
Yes.
did, but we are going to flourish and
That's right.
thrive.
Mhm.
It doesn't come
Absolutely.
easy. We need to distill wisdom, including wisdom in your book and in many other books and many other gifts of wisdom that present themselves. This is going to be a very valuable resource for us in the World Upshift Forum. Delighted that we will be able to have some elements of this on the members area of the World Upshift Forum website. You can visit worldupshift.org. You can get your credentials as a member and go to the members area, and you will find these resources once the book is published. And then you can also access other virtual spaces, online communities through the World Upshift Forum. But don't limit yourself to World Upshift Forum. There's the Ananda community. There's the project that you're going to be developing for Communities of Light. And there are your ideas and visions and what you're doing as well. The important thing is that we can communicate. I've had so many enjoyable conversations with Kabir. I'm so delighted, Kabir. Thank you so much. You've been able to share your lovely ideas and communication style with a much wider audience than just me today. I had you all to myself. I thank you for that. I'd like to thank Ruby, who has been co-hosting this event. I'd like to thank Aruba, who is downstairs translating into Italian. I'd like to thank Lauren Lamore, who helps us with the World Upshift Forum, who is based in Boston, and all of our team on the World Upshift team. I would like to thank Ananda and Kirtani for your beautiful presence and for holding this space and allowing us to have today's conversation here in the Temple of Light at CC. Ananda CC, the European Centre, will be back next week for the the equinox meditation here in this space on the 20th of March, and you can find details on our website, or also directly hear from Ananda. And most of all, I would like to thank you for your presence here, the wonderful Ananda community itself. It's a shame that our audience on Zoom can't see you, but you can. But I can see you, and I can tell you, you're watching on Zoom. It's a beautiful sight. And thank you for being here, for your presence, for your questions, and thank you to our dear audience around the world on Zoom for following us. Please do go to the website, go to worldupshift.org, sign up as a member. We will send you, it's free, and we will send you information about the next Fireside Chat, which is on the 29th of March with Michael Kearney from Santa Barbara in California. I will be doing that myself on Zoom. I won't be with him in person, but it'll just be another, I hope, beautiful conversation about becoming forest. And say next week, I'll be back here with Michael Macy and with others for the equinox meditation. And I hope that we'll see some of you again, both here in presence and on Zoom at that time. So thank you very much, everybody. And thank you for coming together with us today to catalyze an upshift in humanity.
And thank you, Roger, for coming and sharing your love and joy.